Okay, thank you so much for attending, Elodie, Viau, and Adam Seedsman. And we also have Ricardo Conde, who I'm gonna bring him online in a couple of minutes. Let me introduce Elodie first, and then Elodie can start her presentation. Elodie Viau, a new director of telecommunications and integrated applications of the European Space Agency, who started on her role last September 2020. Congratulations and welcome to the community of space. However, you have been with the community of space for a long time. You were actually earlier with the ACCESS in Luxembourg. For 12 years as Vice President for Technology Program Management, where you held new space segment development and as well as end-to-end system design and implementation of the new integrated services. Previously, you were also program manager for 9 satellites which were built at Airbus and launched. So welcome, Elodie, nice to meet you. And I'm gonna give the floor to you, and you can start with your presentation. You have about 10-12 minutes to do that, and then we'll go to a panel session towards the end. Welcome.
So it's a general presentation, so I will be brief, around 10 minutes, but please feel free to ask me any question. So it's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. I'm Elodie Viau, as you mentioned. I'm the Director for Telecommunication and Integrated Application, and it's really a great pleasure to be with you today. We are at the European Space Agency in action for the future of the European space, and that's I will highlight to you the overall plan that we are putting in place towards the future, and of course in the continuation, but also with new ideas and fresh ideas with our new Director General that also was nominated in March of this year, Joseph Aschbacher. And we are moving along with an agenda and an implementation plan that I will highlight you the key points, not going into detail, and maybe a bit of zoom on one or two topics. And here we are. So if I go to the second slide, giving a bit of background of Europe and space. So we have 22 European Space Agency member states, 27 European Union member states that are some of them different from the European Space Agency member states. So we have 16% of global space public funding, and that generate the space in Europe. It's about 230,000 jobs. So put also a bit of the revenue, looking at the upstream and the downstream. And what we see is that there is really a growth overall of the space that become much more digital, entering in the digital economy of the overall world. And the space is not anymore in space alone, but also really interacting with the terrestrial and the ground applications in our day-to-day life. And that's why there is more and more activity and application on the full value chain, from the technology up to the services that are deployed using space assets. And that's, as an institution, the European Space Agency, who we are, right? So we are a bit more than 5,000 workforce. We have over 80 satellites in orbit, where we are there to boost and to support and make space for Europe. So we are here to provide a great boost to private partners, as well as to allow the public institution to achieve their space ambition. So that's a bit who we are, and feel free to ask me any question. So on the agenda of 2025, so we are really looking for a common European space vision. I'm putting you the 5 priorities, let's say, that has been highlighted by your new director. So to enhance the ESA-EU relations, so really space for Europe. To look at even more the commercialization. So because there is more and more commercial space activities that are growing quickly, new space approach that are lead to smaller, narrower satellites sometimes, and reduce the launch cost. And all of that we want to support and to even more encourage all the companies, from startup SME to the mature companies that need to reinvent always themselves. So looking at the innovation. Then there is safety and security, because space, it can be safety in space, but also security allowed by the space segment. Like when you want to communicate very securely and reliably between 2 points, you can have some encryption tools that are distributed by satellite. And this is a great example for banking system, or it can be used also for, when the computer will be able to be more robust and be able to hack because of a bigger quantum computer capability, then you need to have the space domain able to robustify the ongoing used network. So after that, there is program challenges. I will come back on that, which is more looking at the specific activity that we are doing. And then the transformation, because we want to keep leading a modern European Space Agency, acquiring new talent with us, reinventing ourselves as well, getting more digital. So that's also what we try to do. There is a focus that I want to highlight on the green and digital commercialization, because I was saying there is a much more, there is a very entrepreneurial ecosystem within Europe, and we need to even help them to grow and make them successful. And for that, the European Space Agency, with our member states, we want to really go end to end to do like a snowball between public investment and private investment. And then there is a line of action about the talent, the capital, and the speed. The speed today is quite critical, because the economy, and after this COVID phases, the recovery that is needed, is important that we look at sustainable way of doing activity in space and on Earth, using space sometimes to monitor and provide the decision tools. For example, monitoring the CO2, monitoring the global warming, monitoring activity like that, and then providing solutions like telecommunication systems that can optimize the airplane routes to reduce the quantity of CO2 emitted. So that's all those. I'm giving examples that we don't stay just on the, theory, but we are really going into practice. So there is a, as I said, space is not alone anymore, and is looking at interacting with all the set of fields to either tackle a security, a safety angle. When we go for transportation, more the transport becomes autonomous, more you need a space link to make sure that you are not having a gap of coverage in the transmission, that where you don't want that. If your vehicle is getting autonomous, you don't want the communication link to be broken. Or for healthcare, if you are getting a telemedicine, remote telemedicine, you can understand that during an operation, you really want to be connected and having the link safe and reliable. So it's, and I can give many examples. There is some example for the agriculture, for example, where the Earth observation satellite can allow to see where and when you need to irrigate more. So there is plenty of new applications that are coming up, especially with new technology like the artificial intelligence getting into play. So on purpose, I'm not going to browse you the full picture, but it's give you an highlight that space is partnering with the non-space and getting into new field of application. So then here is a bit ESA programs looking at technology, looking at the exploration and robotic. We had recently one of our astronauts, Thomas Pesquet, launched to the International Space Station. So the European Space Agency is about also international collaboration with NASA, with commercial actors, with other space agencies like the Australian. So that's also the gate of Europe to collaborate even more and to achieve better. So there is science with long-term goals and exploring the universe. We have the field of application with 3 key pillars, which are Earth observation, navigation, and telecommunication. You have the operation operation, and of course the launcher. And all those fields are even for operations that are looking at safety in space, for the debris removal, are also partnering more and more with the private sector and boosting those partnerships to be able to develop new concepts and going towards commercialization. For the launcher, there is also a new ecosystem rising up, as much as the new European launcher coming up soon. So, and then I'll put a little bit of zoom on my particular field of telecommunication and space solution. So to show you a bit the projects that are ongoing. A lot of them, some of them are really more on safety and security, really on cryptography. Some of them are more on 5G, 6G, very close to the user market, and having some applications that are really going towards connecting people among them. Some that are more technology focused, of some partnership around quantum and optical transmission in space and on Earth. And it's also integrated with the Earth ecosystem, going to digitalization. Now we are in a digital world, so space is also in this digital world. And then finally on the right, you are getting more towards what we call demand pool activities that are more looking at services, application, looking at new solution to create this. And then I will finish by this multi-domain that is quite unique and that we are putting up together amongst 3 directorates. So we are teaming up between navigation, telecommunication, and human robotic exploration to do this Moonlight project. And basically, what is the spirit is that we want to deploy a small and pragmatic constellation around the moon, and to provide communication and navigation services. And you can imagine when we will have robots there or astronauts on a lunar base, then you will be able to communicate with them in real time and permanently, right? So that's how we are also engaging with NASA in this activity. And we are really calling all the lunar users, being companies that want to have rovers there and want to communicate and use navigation system for this and lower down your cost of mission, or you being looking forward to develop space resource utilization on the moon, or any other ideas that you may have. So we really, there is a kind of boost right now of the space area, and I look forward discussing with you and getting your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Elodie. I have one simple question, then we'll move to the main questions later. When will we see the first European astronaut to put the step on the moon? I mean, when will be the next thing?
Yeah, so depending the various discussion, the optimist will say 2025, and the a bit more realistic or a bit more pessimist, depending where you are, will say more or less 2019. So, you know, there is a range, depending if you are more on the optimistic or realistic, but what I want to be today is on the ambitious one. So let's shoot for 2025, and then we will see if we can make it happen.
Excellent. I volunteer. Okay.
Well noted. Huh?
I've been applying for the application for many, many years. Actually, I have not applied, but I wished I wanted to apply before, but many years ago. Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
All the best. Thank you so much. We'll come back later on the panel session. Now I want to introduce Adam. All the screens. You can see that.
Thank you so much. I can. That's excellent. Thank you so much.
Let me introduce to you. So Adam Seedsman is the Executive Director of Strategy and Policy at the Australian Space Agency, commencing in the role when the agency was launched back in 2018, July 2018. And I came to Canberra actually to meet one of your colleagues around that time.
And she says to say hello, actually, Tony. So
thank you very much.
Hello from Alex.
And then, so Adam has responsibility for civil space policy matters, as well as development and implementation of the agency's investment plan and strategy to grow and transform the Australian space industry. The floor is all yours, Adam. Thank you for being here again.
Of course, Tony. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and it's a great pleasure to be here with Elodie. It's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for your very informative presentation about European Space Agency. My focus will be a little bit different. I think this morning I spoke a little bit about how the Australian Space Agency works, how we operate, and some of the things we're doing. This time I'm going to focus a little bit on some of the initiatives that we are delivering. So first of all, how we are working with NASA on our Moon to Mars program, and the second aspect of this is how we work. We sit within the Australian Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources, and we work with our colleagues to deliver the broader industry development initiatives. And I previously mentioned the Modern Manufacturing Strategy, which is a big initiative of the government, which is being supported to 1.3 billion Australian dollars. And I'll talk about how this is supporting the space sector. I will go through the slides quite quickly, but I'm sure Tony will make them available to you afterwards, because one of them really is an eye chart that you need to spend some time on. So Tony, the next slide, please. And of course, one thing I did forget to do was once again acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I'm presenting. So from here where I'm sitting, I'm on the Ngunnawal country, and I would like to pay my respects again to elders past, present and emerging. So here is the slide I have on our Moon to Mars initiative. In December 2019, the Australian government committed to join with NASA on its ambitious plan to return to the Moon and Mars. The commitment was $150 million to uplift Australian businesses and to help them join with NASA. And I'm just going to take a moment to talk about how we're doing this. So in one case, or in the first case, we're talking about the supply chain program, and we have almost $50 million here to support Australian businesses and researchers to uplift their capabilities and to enter global supply chains. I think, as many of you know, Australia is at the other end of the world, and it's quite hard for us to have suppliers that are intrinsically connected into these supply chains, having the appropriate certifications, qualifications, and processes in place. And this grant program, which is open now, we've already supported, I think the first round we supported 2 businesses, and the second round is going through its approval process now with the third round open. And this will continue over the next 5 years with increasing value available to applicants. The demonstrator program is how we will select our main mission to support or to work with NASA. So in this case, we have done feasibility grants is the first one, where we're supporting a large number of small grants to researchers and businesses that want to bring forward ideas that could support or have the potential to support the Moon to Mars program. And I should point out, we are willing to support ideas that go for any of the Moon to Mars partners, so any of the signatories of the Artemis Accords, as Australia is also a signatory to that. So this is a 2-stage grant process, and the first one is supporting feasibility ideas, and the second one is supporting mission grants. So this is where we really want to push forward those first ideas and get them up into space and proving what they do. And then the last program, and we're still working on the design for this at the moment, is the major initiative, is the $50 million investment. And we have a bit more information about the details of that one on our website if you want to go and have a look at the detail. And we've actually just finished a consultation on the design of that. So I can provide a link to the YouTube video of that. Next slide, please, Tony. So I mentioned before that space has been identified as one of 6 national manufacturing priority roadmaps. And next slide, please, Tony. So we're recognising space along with things like medical technologies, which of course is in response to the COVID pandemic, but also to uplift other medical manufacturing capabilities in Australia. We have other things like critical metals, and critical minerals and metals, and of course, so space is where we are focused. This slide here kind of sets out the vision and sort of how we're going to support what we want to do. So the investments will support manufacturing opportunities for products that go into space. Space components, so that's as part of a value chain. It can be ground systems, it can be space systems, it can be deep space systems, and associated products and infrastructure. And you can see there it mentions launch facilities, and I know we had a question about that, which I can answer in a little bit. New technologies, materials, many of the things that we've heard people talking about today as being key and emerging technologies. So over the first 2 years of this vision, it really says what we want to do, and really uplifting Australia's small satellite manufacturing capabilities is a huge part of what we want to do. We want to spin in for adjacent sectors, and that really means looking at those businesses that are not yet working in the space domain, yet have got suitable technologies to cross-pollinate. Our expertise in robotics in the resource sector is one example of that. And the other piece we've got there is meeting strategic and defence needs. So that's largely about meeting the long-term strategic and national goals. Next slide, please. So this is the eye chart. You can go and have a look at this one at your own leisure. But we are supporting investments in the design phase, the build phase of capabilities, the qualification phase, because as I mentioned, this can be a challenge for Australian organisation, and the access to space and operation phase. I won't dwell on this because I think the next slide is probably more important. We can just brush through this. With the next slide, thank you. So there's 3 streams that are underway at the moment. So while businesses need to be Australian to apply for this, we're more than happy for the applicant to have international partners that will bring key technology and collaboration and technology transfer into Australia. The translation stream is about translating new ideas and uplifting them to commercialise them in our space context. The integration stream is about integrating in global and national supply chains, and the collaboration stream is for funding very large projects. And I'll let you use your imagination as to what those might be, but the translation and integration stream is about funding projects in the $2 to $20 million kind of range, and the collaboration stream, which is not yet open for applications, will support really big projects, sort of $20 million and greater. Next slide, please, Tony. And look, that's kind of the end of it. And you know, these are just kind of 2 of the investments or the initiatives that we're putting forward at the moment, and they're in place to support Australian space businesses. But please be creative about how you think about how this might apply to your organisation. We know that there's some things that Australia does really well, and we'll articulate those in the the technology roadmaps that I mentioned earlier. But these investments do exist. So if you can find yourself an Australian partner, if you want some help to find an Australian partner, then there could be some opportunity here to increase collaboration, which is really what we want to do. And this is one of the reasons I'm talking to you today. Look, I think that's all I really wanted to say. So, Tony, more than happy to take any questions, or if there are none, I'm more than happy to address the questions that were raised earlier.
Adam, thank you so much for that. I'll ask you one question, and then we'll move on to Ricardo next. So, in your explanation, one of the first few slides, you had three sectors which you're actually concentrating your future efforts. And so, what kind of missions are you looking to support with Trailblazer?
Okay, that's a really good question. So, we've just gone out to consultation, and as we've been developing this program, we've really gone out and engaged with Australian industry, Australian researchers, and said, what are the things that we think, what are the things that you're good at, and what are the things that you think can add value? And we've had a lot of discussions with NASA, and we know that there's a few things that they're interested in. So one of the things that they're interested in looking at is Australian participating in a resource recovery type activity. As you know, Australia is a mine for much of the world, And many of the robotic operations that do occur in Australia are operated from control rooms that are 1,000 kilometres away. And you know what? That's if you turn that up vertically, that's well above low Earth orbit. And so, how can we leverage this in a resource recovery type application? Another area that we're looking at is how we might support medical remote medicine in space type activities. We have a lot of expertise, and we're already working with NASA on this and have been for decades through the Australian Antarctic Division to look at how we support remote medicine applications in Antarctica. And you know the distances are, or the remoteness is just the same, and so some of the technologies and capabilities that develop there are very highly relevant to space exploration. So looking at building on those. So that's just sort of some of the ideas, but this is why we've had the consultation open. So while the consultation is currently closed, I will point out that you know, if there's something that you really desperately want to tell us, we'll still take an email to inform how we design the program.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We'll move to Ricardo now. I wish the COVID restrictions will come over, and on my 10th time to Australia, I'll come and visit you in Canberra.
I would love that very much. It's beautiful at this time of year. It's very sunny.
Excellent. We should have been there for the conference. Thank you. So next on the panel session will be Ricardo. I'm going to introduce Ricardo now. Thank you, Ricardo, for being here. Okay, Ricardo, so this is your second time in our participating at the ACCESS.SPACE. And let me introduce you. Ricardo Conde is the president of the Portuguese Space Agency. Ricardo began his professional career in 1991, having been linked to the aeronautics and space sector since 1993, with the participation in several national and international programs, in particular the space and ground segments. And he was recently responsible for the ground segment business development at Edisoft, a Thales Group company. And in 2019, Ricardo joined the Portuguese Space Agency as a member of the board, and then about a year later, he was appointed president. Congratulations on that, Ricardo, and thank you for coming back. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon to everyone, and also hello to Elodie and Adam, and also to you and our audience. So let me start to say that Portugal has an experience in space around 20 years. This journey started 20 years ago when Portugal signed the convention of ESA. It was a big strategic step that we did at that time. Now we have some more maturity, and we need to explore some other directions. And here's the question: where we want to be in 10 years, and how to do it. And for that, if you look in this perspective, Portugal is not a small rectangle that we have here in the screen, right? So we have this raw material, which is our strategic location. And this brings to us some motivation also to explore this raw material. Because if you look to this huge area, huge platform, Portugal is one of the biggest countries in Europe. This gives you an idea about our influence in Europe, and particularly in the Atlantic. And for that, we take let's say the benefits of this location to build a national strategy for space. Of course, it is focused not only in the oceans, in the Atlantic, but also in the other possibilities that we can leverage at land. But in 2018, at the national level, we created the national strategy for space. We call it Portugal Space 2030. It is a research and innovation growth strategy in the space economy. And our vision is quite simple. It's we still are quite young in this space domain, but we want to be a space nation by the end of these decades. And this brings to us some ambitions, but we need also to see where we are now and what we want to be in the few years. And the strategy, there are some objectives. Of course, focus in economic growth, and this is related to create some space economy, multiply by 10 what we have now, creating around 1,000 jobs in this decade, increase our international relations. And I like to see here also Elodie from his, Adam from Australia, which are not only our counterparts, agency counterparts for cooperation, but also most part of the things that we will implement and we are implementing during these years as based work based in the cooperation, particularly with the European Space Agency. Of course, we want to increase the technology capacity. We want to continue our capacity building. And our target, as I said, it was to develop the space sectors. But during the last 20 years, we're focused basically to develop some competences. And there are several areas that our companies, our research and institutions, development institutions that are participating in several missions with several components, several subsystems. You have, for example, infrastructures, ground segments, mission control, some equipment, magnetometers. Also, we are now involved in the production of the kick station for rockets, cameras. So this kind of capacity building that we did these last 20 years, it was something that we reached to a moment to think to another step. And another step is exactly our ambition to jump to national programs. And for that, last year, we launched 4 main programmatic challenges. One is the Atlantic satellite, what we call the Satellite Atlantic Constellation. I will address this later. The Digital Planet, Space Connectivity, and Space Innovation Ecosystem in ACCESS. So these are the 4 main pillars that we want to build a national program in cooperation with the European Space Agency to put ourselves in another level in the coming years. Regarding the Atlantic Constellation, this is a cooperative, let's say, cooperative constellation with other Atlantic nations, because we are, as I showed you before, we share these. There are many nations share the same problems, same concerns about the Atlantic. So we launched the idea in InQ Plus in his program we already start the study for these 16 satellites for the constellation in a cooperative way with other countries, and also 3 very high resolution optical satellites. So this is basically should be led by the industry and focus in the commercial driven. So this is one of the pillars. Another one is the Digital Planet, which is the way we'll tackle the data policy to develop downstream applications. So we realize more and more that we need more data to better understand the interactions between climate, oceans, but also to tackle the problems of the land registry, the monitoring of our territory, and also the big tackle the problems of the fires that we have. This is a big problem here in Portugal. So the Digital Planet is a multi-platform Earth observation data based also in this Atlantic constellation that we want to leverage the development of these downstream applications. So this is one of the second programmatic challenge that we are launching. The third one, like Elodie already mentioned, is something that Portugal should be really engaged with the space connectivity. One of the things that we are starting, we already have some research and development groups here in Portugal in the quantum communications, and this is something that we want to embark also in the payloads in our Atlantic constellation. This will be also done together in a very close cooperation framed with with the HISA programs, like Elodie already said. Another programmatic challenge that we have with the Space Innovation Hub in Santa Maria. There are several initiatives. One is ACCESS.SPACE Spaceports. ACCESS.SPACE Spaceport is we take the advantage of our locations. If you look in the pictures, we have very good conditions to launch to the south. There are no, let's say, obstacles. We have a free corridor, and of course, this is something that we are taking the benefits to the geography to position ourselves in the competition that we know that in other countries, Norway, Switzerland, Scotland, but we believe that we have the best conditions to do it, and Portugal, and particularly ACCESS, to become one of the main spaceports for micro launches in Europe. Another point, another dimension of this ecosystem in Santa Maria is the ground segment. We are building, and through the years, the capabilities, new capabilities to in the communications to access to space. We have several. We have a teleport that can be used also to this spaceport, but also to new missions, not only scientific but also commercial missions that and commercial services that in fact they are already operating commercial services. And we have also the LBI investigations, scientific investigations in the island that is let's say a package that we call the ground segment services. And we are already preparing the Santa Maria as a landing site for the Space Rider, for the commercial space transportation. This is something that we are very keen to see as a reality. In fact, this will be, let's say, a reality starting by the end of this month. We already did the kickoff to start the project. And we will have the landing site, the processing facilities, and of course, this is some kind of seed that we want to continue in the future for the commercial space transportation. So this is roughly a summary of what we are doing at the national level. There are some ambitions, and of course, and back to you, Tony. The main thing here is we are, as I said, a new kid in the block at the European level in space. So we want to build our capabilities during these 4 years, first in the first phase, and then another 4 to consolidate. So we are, by the way, we have a package, around the package of 100 million euros to do this. We are using a recovery plan also as part of the funding mechanism, but this is something that will be a reality in this first phase in 4 years. Back to you, Tony.
Thank you, Ricardo. You have great assets in Portugal with the islands in the middle of the Atlantic for a spaceport. And when will the spaceport be ready? Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and which companies can apply to start launching from there?
Look, we opened an international, let's say, process, a competitive process 2 years ago. In fact, we are finalizing the process, and we believe that at the end of this year, we sign a contract with a commercial company to explore. The thing is, you know, that there are now the level of maturity of the rockets, these micro launches, are not yet, let's say, mature enough. But I think we are in the same time frame to the development of these new rockets and new micro launchers in Europe. And I'm quite sure that on the beginning of the next year, we'll start to see some movements, not only the productions of micro launchers, but also the conclusions of the spaceports. And the Santa Maria spaceport will be one of them, for sure.
Excellent. Do you have to leave us? You said you have to leave us in a few minutes, or?
Yeah, because I have a conference in Europe, Nano Forum in the 13. So I have more, say, 10 minutes.
Okay, so let me get everyone back in the panel, and we can start asking a couple of questions to everyone. So Elodie and Adam, if you could come back showing yourselves through the video. Thank you very much. I'd like to pick up a question from the attendees because we have to thank them actually that we have this conference and that we had a great registration of 590 people this morning. Although about 150 have come to show their faces. Thank you so much. And from Peter de Selding, Ricardo, I think you answered a little bit about the Azores spaceport. He was interested about the licensing regime, if it's the status of the licensing regime for the spaceport, and also is this a strategic investment from Portugal or is it supposed to make money? That's the question from Peter de Selding.
Well, I should say that if we're running a sustainable business, the business itself must be paid, right? So it is, I should say, it is a trade-off between both. It is strategic because this grants the access to space. This is a capability that we want to really install in Portugal. As I said, we are preparing also the initiative for Atlantic Constellation, which is the middle stream. So, and also the digital planet, the downstream. We want to have the full value chain. So it's strategic for Portugal. And more than this, we already start to cooperate in the other countries, in particular Germany, to manufacture some parts of some rockets here in Portugal. So this is, yes, this is strategic and will be commercial driven, but with let's say some license from the governments. In particular, this happens in the Santa Maria Island. That means the regional government is the responsible to issue this license.
Thank you. I'll go to the next question, which is online here in the Q&A box. From Cinda Mayri or Majory. Question to Elodie: how can ESA and the EU work more efficiently together to create European markets for space technologies?
That's a good question. So we are collaborating with the European Union, and we are also cooperating with the industry. So actively listening. So actively, why actively? Because we can orientate and guide through the various technology that are coming up. Ricardo was mentioning the optical ground segment, but also the Earth observation constellation satellite. So actively, like by monitoring very closely our institution time for reaction and time to contract is one of the possibility, and also having a local team in the region to support the startup, to support the SMEs, to support the economy overall. So I think it's in to be really proactive within our member states. And as Ricardo and Adam was mentioning, the space domain is about partnership and collaboration. So it's also putting people in contact with each other more and more throughout the various fields, because now the downstream and the upstream cannot be dissociated from one or the other. There is new applications that are created thanks to the new technology. So it's not technology for technology, it's really technology for a purpose and at the right time. And I think that's what we are trying to promote, to go at the tempo of the world.
Thank you. Question for Adam, which this morning someone asked, and maybe we didn't have a chance to answer it, Adam. So from Alexander Klusherev, Adam has mentioned the Australia Space Agency is going to create more than 20,000 new workplaces relevant to the space area. It's a good challenge. It's about 0.1% of the Australian population. Does this mean that Australia wishes to create its national launch facilities as well?
You know, it's a great question, Tony. And if I might, there was one of the other questions you forwarded to me on email, if I can read that out, because I think I can answer both questions here. The other question was, access to space is one of your priorities, but also said ASA wants to run between the feet of competitors and launch services crowded with competitors. So what does Australia want to do? So I think that I can answer those two questions. So look, at this point, the Australian government does not have a policy for government-owned and sponsored launch capability. However, we want to ensure that we do have the ability to access space when we want to. And so that means we need to create the conditions for commercial actors to introduce launch capability for Australia, should they see the business case. And of course, other countries are looking to do this kind of thing as well. But we're clear this must be on a commercial basis. We don't have a nationally identified launch capability. We need to launch the satellite, so therefore we don't have the business to underpin it. But we want to create the conditions, the right regulatory environment. You heard me talk about some of the grant programs, and many of those would be suitable to support that. But we expect jobs not just to be created in the launch category. So I know there's some Australian businesses are looking at Gilmore Space Technology, Equatorial Launch, Southern Launch. They're all businesses that are quite public about their ambition. So we already have jobs in those businesses, but it's going to be in diverse areas. I mean, Elodie's talked about the downstream applications, the services. This is a huge piece for Australia. Perhaps a little bit in competition to our friends in Portugal. We have Digital Earth Australia, the Digital Earth platform, which is led by our friends at Geoscience Australia, one of our partner agencies. And so the applications for those kinds of things, as well as the new manufacturing jobs we're seeking to grow. So, we've grown. We do have some economic statistics. We published our economic snapshot report recently. And of course, there's a bit of a lag indicator on some of this data. So it is the pre-COVID, the COVID data. But between financial year 16-17 and financial year 18-19, we have strange financial years in Australia. The sector's grown by 5.8% and generating about $4.6 billion in revenue, with around 11,000 employees across the space sector or the space economy in Australia. So it's not trivial and it's surprising, and it's one of the reasons it's a priority for growth at the moment.
Excellent. As I'm going to ask a question regarding going back to the moon, Elodie, could you put a link to the workshop you have on the 1st of June about the Lunacom nav workshop? There was someone interested. If you could put it on the chat box below, and then I can email it to everybody else later.
Yes, I will send it to you by email because I don't have
okay.
the link,
No
but I don't have it handy right now, so I will email it to you that you distribute.
Okay, perfect. I'll do that a bit later. Thank you. So I have a question. I've always been interested since when I was a child to become an astronaut and then go to the moon and beyond. But anyway, we're now getting a whole load of companies commercially, actually, that want to exploit, the asteroids and the moon, and a lot of private entities that would like to start commercializing this, as well as some of the other questions will be sustainability of that. How can you sustain an activity financially? What are you actually producing, and what are you actually selling? So the issue is all about, I don't know much about the Artemis Accord, so maybe you can talk a little bit about the Artemis Accord, and then how does that combines with the commercial exploitation that companies would like to do in the future. We have the Artemis Accord, as well as we have the Outer Space Treaty, which prohibits from owning anything, from exploiting anything. But that's up to interpretation by lawyers, and we're not lawyers, the four of us, I suppose. We are engineers. So the question from your perspective, as agencies, how do you see commercial activities with those of the institutions like yourselves? How can you help them push forward? That's a tricky question.
So I can start and then go over if you want. Basically, yes, the space resource is a key question, and I think all the countries and internationally amongst various members and space institution, we are discussing how to regulate eventually and how to organize ourselves and collaborate internationally. So there is for the European side, there is a European Space Resource Innovation Center that has been created recently, last year, where there is some innovation and some technically and in an innovative side that is a boost from the technology standpoint, but also looking at those partnerships with the international and with the other agencies. So there is two aspects really. How about the technology? How to lower down the cost? So typically, when I'm discussing this Moonlight initiative, which is a service of communication and navigation around the moon, is to allow the private industry to also be able to send rovers or modules that will not need to have the full telecommunication or navigation modules on board. So it will lower down the entry cost of their development. So to facilitate through technology the participation of those private actors, as well as supporting them financially. So that's the first aspect. And then the other aspect is the regulatory aspect that is fundamental when we start talking about space resource. To who those resources belong, how can they be exploited or not exploited, by which country, ensuring an international collaboration. So that will be my short answer. And I'm not the expert on the topic, so please bear with me.
Well, I should say the same as Elodie, because first there are technology barriers, and we need to have a very strong coordination between the international regulations, because imagine that some companies want to build a satellite constellation, which is already on the race, a satellite constellation on the moon. This is they can do it. They can do it here. They can also do it in the moon. But I think for that, if you are talking about, for example, the resources, the old question: the moon belongs to whom, and how can we share it? This is the outer space. There will be slides in the outer space that this is mine, this is yours. So they are something that needs really to be regulated. And this is the tricky part of the thing, because look at what is happening with the space debris. This is something, discussion, and it's quite difficult to have a regulation, right? Look at what are now the problems that we are facing with the international regulation for the climate change. This is really a challenge. And if you look to the outer space as an operational sovereignty domain, this is really, it jumps on the military side. It's something that is really difficult to regulate. It's my soft opinion, let's say like this.
We do have some examples with the Antarctic Treaty, I have to say, as well as the Oceanic Resources Treaty, which actually are international treaties. I fully appreciate your thoughts on that. Adam, any last minute thoughts? We're going to close in about 2 minutes at maximum.
Honestly, when Elodie was speaking and then Ricardo speaking, I could not agree with their points any more. Absolutely, the challenge exists in the international system, and I think what's important is all of the actors are aware of this. And we have some great avenues, through our friends in Vienna to go through it and have the active conversations about how we have the intersection with the Outer Space Treaty and the other space treaties in that context, and how we will manage the use of these resources. It's really topical, and from the Australian side, I think you'll hear more from us in the coming future. But I think that's probably all I can say today. But it's a very on-point question. Thank you.
And you have a great picture of the moon behind you. I'm going to leave you the last thoughts with my application for the space agency to be the astronauts landing on the moon. Here it is. I look forward to the invitation by the European Space Agency, and let me know which country you prefer. I got 3 different citizenship of the European, well, 2 of them European Union now, and 1 actually is not anymore. Excellent. Thank you very much with you being part of the panel. This was put together the last minute, and I'm really glad to have you on board. I hope to have you soon again, and all the best. Thank you so much.
Tony, Elodie, Adam. Ciao. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.
Bye.